Chapter 7 The Journey to the Great Oz. They were obliged to camp out that night under a large tree in the forest, for there were no houses near. The trees made a good thick covering to protect them from the dew, and the Tin Woodman chopped a great pile of wood with his axe. And Dorothy built a splendid fire that warmed her and made her feel less lonely. She and Toto ate the last of their bread, and now she did not know what they would do for breakfast. "If you wish," said the lion, "I'll go into the forest and kill a deer for you. You can roast it by the fire, since your tastes are so peculiar that you prefer cooked food, and then you will have a very good breakfast." "Don't, please don't," begged the Tin Woodman. "I should certainly weep if you killed a poor deer, and then my jaws would rust again." But the lion went away into the forest and found his own supper, and no one even knew what it was, for he didn't mention it. And the Scarecrow found a tree full of nuts and filled Dorothy's basket with them, so that she would not be hungry for a long time. She thought this was very kind and thoughtful of the Scarecrow, but she laughed heartily at the awkward way in which the poor creature picked up the nuts. His padded hands were so clumsy, and the nuts were so small that he dropped almost as many as he put into the basket. But the Scarecrow did not mind how long it took him to fill the basket, for it enabled him to keep away from the fire, as he feared the spark might get into his straw and burn him up. So he kept a good distance away from the flames, and only came near to cover Dorothy with dry leaves when she lay down to sleep. These kept her very snug and warm, and she slept soundly until morning. When it was daylight, the girl bathed her face in a little rippling brook, and soon after they all started towards the Emerald City. This was to be an eventful day for the travelers. They had hardly been walking an hour when they saw before them a great ditch that crossed the road and divided the forest as far as they could see on the other side. It was a very wide ditch, and when they crept up to the edge and looked into it, they could see it was also very deep, and there were many jagged rocks at the bottom. For a moment it seemed that their journey must end. "What shall we do?" asked Dorothy despairingly. "I haven't the faintest idea," said the Tin Woodman. And the lion shook his shaggy mane and looked thoughtful. But the Scarecrow said, "We cannot fly, that is certain. Neither can we climb down into this great ditch. Therefore, if we cannot jump over it, we must stop where we are." "I think I could jump over it," said the cowardly lion, after measuring the distance carefully in his mind. "Then we are all right," answered the Scarecrow, "for you can carry us all over on your back one at a time." Well, I'll try," said the lion. "Who will go first?" "I will," declared the Scarecrow, "for if you found that you could not jump over the gulf, Dorothy would be killed, or the Tin Woodman badly dented on the rocks below. But I am on your back, it will not matter as much, for the fall would not hurt me at all." "I'm terribly afraid of falling myself," said the cowardly lion, "but I suppose there's nothing to do but try it. So get on my back and we'll make the attempt." The Scarecrow sat upon the lion's back, and the big beast walked to the edge of the gulf and crouched down. "Why don't you run and jump?" asked the Scarecrow. "Because that isn't the way we lions do these things," he replied. Then, by giving a great spring, he shot through the air and landed safely on the other side. They were all greatly pleased to see how easily he did it, and after the Scarecrow had got down from his back, the lion sprang across the ditch again. Dorothy thought she would go next, so she took Toto in her arms and climbed on the lion's back, holding tightly into his mane with one hand. The next moment, it seemed as if she were flying through the air. And then, before she had time to think about it, she was safe on the other side. The lion went back a third time and got the Tin Woodman, and then they all sat down for a few moments to give the beast a chance to rest, for his great leaps had made his breath short, and he panted like a big dog that has been running too long. They found the forest very thick on this side, and it looked dark and gloomy. After the lion had rested, they started along the road of yellow brick, silently wondering, each in his own mind, if ever they would come to the end of the woods and reach the bright sunshine again. To add to their discomfort, they soon heard strange noises in the depths of the forest, and the lion whispered to them that it was the part of the country that the Kalidas lived. "What are the Kalidas?" asked the girl. "They are monstrous beasts with bodies like bears and heads like tigers," replied the lion, "and with claws so long and sharp that they could tear me into two as easily as I could kill Toto. I'm terribly afraid of the Kalidas." "I'm not surprised that you are," returned Dorothy. "They must be dreadful beasts." The lion was about to reply when suddenly they came up to another gulf across the road. But this one was so broad and deep that the lion knew at once he could not leap across it. So they sat down to consider what they should do. And after serious thought, the Scarecrow said, "Here is a great tree, standing close to the ditch. If the Tin Woodman can chop it down so that it will fall into to the other side, we can walk across it easily." That is a first-rate idea," said the lion. "One would almost suspect that you had brains in your head instead of straw." The woodman set to work at once, and so sharp was his axe that the tree was soon chopped nearly through. Then the lion put his strong front legs against the tree and pushed with all his might. And slowly the big tree tipped and fell with a crash across the ditch, with its top branches on the other side. They had just started to cross this clear bridge when a sharp growl made them all look up. To their horror, they saw running toward them two beasts with bodies like bears and heads like tigers. "They are the Kalidas," said the cowardly lion, beginning to tremble. "Quick," cried the Scarecrow, "let us cross over." So Dorothy went first, holding Toto in her arms. The Tin Woodman followed, and the Scarecrow came next. The lion, although he was certainly afraid, turned to face the Kalidas, and then he gave so loud and terrible a roar that Dorothy screamed and the Scarecrow fell backward, while even the fierce beasts stopped short and looked at him in surprise. But seeing they were bigger than the lion, and remembering that there were two of them and only one of him, the Kalidas again rushed forward, and the lion crossed over the tree and turned to see what they would do next. Without stopping an instant, the fierce beasts also began to cross the tree. And the lion said to Dorothy, "We are lost, for they will surely tear us into pieces with their sharp claws. But stand close behind me and I will fight them as long as I'm alive." "Wait a minute," called the Scarecrow. He had been thinking what was best to be done, and now he asked the Tin Woodman to chop the end of the tree so that rested on their side of the ditch. The Tin Woodman began to use his axe at once, and just as the two Kalidas were nearly across, the tree fell with a crash into the gulf, carrying the ugly starling brutes with it, and both were dashed into pieces on the sharp rocks at the bottom. "Well," said the Cowardly Lion, drawing a long breath of relief, "I see we're going to live a little while longer, and I'm glad of it, for it must be a very uncomfortable thing not to be alive. Those creatures frighten me so badly that my heart is beating yet." "Ah," said the Tin Woodman sadly, "I wish I had a heart to beat." This adventure made the travelers more anxious than ever to get out of the forest, and they walked so fast that Dorothy became tired and had to ride on the lion's back. To their great joy, the trees became thinner and thinner the farther they advanced. And in the afternoon, they suddenly came upon a broad river flowing swiftly just before them. On the other side of the water, they could see that the road of yellow brick running through a beautiful country with green meadows dotted with bright flowers and all the road bordered with trees hanging of delicious fruits. They were greatly pleased to see this delightful country before them. "How shall we cross the river?" asked Dorothy. That is an easy one. "That is easily done," replied the Scarecrow. "The Tin Woodman must build us a raft, so we can float to the other side." So the Woodman took his axe and began to chop down small trees to make a raft. And when he was busy at this, the Scarecrow found the riverbank a tree full of fine fruit. This pleased Dorothy, who had eaten nothing but nuts all day, and she made a hearty meal of the ripe fruit. But it takes time to make a raft, even when one is an industrious and untiring as the Tin Woodman. And when night came, the work was not done. So they found a cozy place under the trees where they slept until the morning. And Dorothy dreamed of the Emerald City and the good Wizard Oz, who could soon send her back to her own home again. Chapter 8, The Deadly Poppy Field. Our little party of travelers awakened the next morning refreshed and full of hope, and Dorothy breakfasted like a princess of peaches and plums from the trees beside the river. Behind them was a dark forest they had passed safely through. Although they had suffered many discouragements, but before them was a lovely sunny country that seemed to beckon them onto the Emerald City. To be sure, the broad river now cut them off this beautiful land, but the raft was nearly done, and after the Tin Woodman had cut a few more logs and fastened them together with wooden pins, they were ready to start. Dorothy sat down in the middle of the raft, and Dorothy in her arms. When the Cowardly Lion stepped upon the raft, it tipped badly, for he was too big and heavy. But the Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman stood upon the other ends to steady it, and they had long poles in their hands to push the raft through the water. They got along quite well at first, but when they reached the middle of the river, the swift current swept the raft downstream farther and farther away from the road of yellow brick. And the water grew so deep that the long poles would not touch the bottom. "This is bad," said the Tin Woodman, "for if we cannot go to the land, we cannot get to the land, we shall be carried into the country of the wicked witch of the west, and she will enchant us and make us her slaves. And then I should get no brains," said the Scarecrow, "and I should get no courage," said the cowardly Lion, "and I should get no heart," said the Tin Woodman, "and I should never get back to Kansas," said Dorothy. "We must certainly get to the Emerald City if we can," the Scarecrow continued, and he pushed so hard on his long pole that it stuck fast in the mud and the bottom of the river. Then, before he could pull it out again or let it go, the raft was swept away, and the poor Scarecrow left clinging on to the pole in the middle of the river. "Goodbye," he called after him, and they were very sorry to leave him. Indeed, the Tin Woodman began to cry, but fortunately remembered that he might rust, so he dried his tears on Dorothy's apron. Of course, this was a bad thing for the Scarecrow. "I am now worse off than I first met Dorothy," he thought. "Then I was stuck on a pole in a cornfield, where I could make believe scare the crows. At any rate, but surely there were no use for a Scarecrow stuck on a pole in the middle of the river. I'm afraid I shall never have any brains after all." Down the stream the raft floated, and the poor Scarecrow was left far behind. Then the Lion said, "Something must be done to save us. I think I can swim to the shore and pull the raft after me, if you will only hold fast to the tip of my tail." So he sprang into the water, and the Tin Woodman caught fast hold of his tail. Then the Lion began to swim with all his might towards the shore. It was hard work, although it was big, but by and by they were drawn out of the current, and then Dorothy took the Tin Woodman's long pole and helped push the raft to the land. They were all tired out when they reached the shore at last and stepped up upon the pretty green grass. And they also knew that the stream had carried them a long way past the yellow brick that led to the Emerald City. "What shall we do now?" asked the Tin Woodman. And the Lion lay down on the grass and let the sun dry him. "We must get back to the road in some way," said Dorothy. "The best plan will be a walk along the river bank until we come to the road again," remarked the Lion. So when they were rested, Dorothy picked up her basket and they started along the grassy bank, back to the road from which the river had carried them. It was a lovely country with plenty of flowers and fruit trees and sunshine to cheer them, and they had not felt so sorry for the poor Scarecrow. They could have been very happy. They walked along as they could, Dorothy only stopping once to pick a beautiful flower, and after a time the Tin Woodman cried out, "Look!" Then they all pointed at the river and saw the Scarecrow perched upon his pole in the middle of the water. He looking very lonely and sad. "What can we do to save him?" asked Dorothy. The Lion and the Woodman both shook their heads, for they did not know. So they sat down upon the bank, gazed wistfully at the Scarecrow until a stork flew by, who, upon seeing them, stopped to rest at the water's edge. "Who are you, and where are you going?" asked the stork. I am Dorothy, answered the girl, and these are my friends, the Tin Woodman and the Cowardly Lion. We're going to the Emerald City. This isn't the road, said the stork as she twisted her long neck and looked sharply at the queer party. I know it, returned Dorothy, but we have lost the Scarecrow and we're wondering how we can get him again. Where is he? Asked the stork. Over there in the river, answered the little girl. If he weren't so big and heavy, I could get him for you, remarked the stork. He isn't heavy a bit, said Dorothy eagerly, for he is stuffed with straw. If you will bring him back to us, we shall thank you ever and ever so much. Well, I'll try, said the stork, but if I find he is too heavy to carry, I shall have to drop him in the river again. So the bird flew in the air and over the water till she came to where the Scarecrow was perched upon his pole. Then the stork came with her great claws and grabbed the Scarecrow by the arm and carried him up into the air and back to the bank, where Dorothy and the lion and the Tin Woodman and Toto were sitting. When the Scarecrow found himself among his friends again, he was so happy that he hugged them all, and even the lion and Toto. And as they walked along, he sang "Tol-de-ri-de-o." As every step, he felt so gay. I was afraid I should have to stay in the river before, he said. But the kind stork saved me. If I ever get any brains, I shall find the stork again and do her some kindness in return. That's all right, said the stork, who was flying along beside them. I always like to help anyone in trouble. But I must go now, and for my babies are waiting in the nest for me. I hope you will find the Emerald City and that Oz will help you. Thank you, replied the Scarecrow. Then the kind stork flew into the air and was soon out of sight. They walked along, listening to the singing of the brightly colored birds and looking at the lovely flowers, which now became so thick that the ground was carpeted with them. There were big and yellow and white and blue and purple blossoms. Besides great clusters of scarlet poppies, which were so brilliant in color they almost dazzled Dorothy's eyes. Aren't they beautiful? The girl asked as she breathed in the spicy scent of the bright flowers. I suppose so, answered the Scarecrow, but when I have brains I shall probably like them better. If I only had a heart I should love them, added the Tin Woodman. I always did like flowers, said the lion. They seem so helpless and frail, but there are none in the forest so bright as these. They now came upon more and more big scarlet poppies, and fewer of the other flowers, and soon they found themselves in the midst of the gray meadow of poppies. Now it is well known that when there are many of these flowers together, their odor is so powerful that anyone who breathes it falls asleep. And if the sleeper is not carried away from the scent of the flowers, he sleeps on and on forever. But Dorothy did not know this, nor could she get away from the bright red flowers that were everywhere about. So presently, her eyes grew heavy, and she felt she must sit down to rest and to sleep. But the Tin Woodman would not let her do this. We must hurry and get back to the road of yellow brick before dark, he said, and the Scarecrow agreed with him. So they kept walking until Dorothy could stand no longer. Her eyes closed in spite of herself. Then she forgot what she was and fell among in the poppies, fast asleep. What shall we do? asked the Tin Woodman. If we leave her here, she will die, said the lion. The smell of the flowers is killing us all. I can scarcely keep my eyes open, and the dog is asleep already. It was true. Toto had fallen down beside his little mistress, but the Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman, not being made of flesh, were not troubled by the scent of the flowers. Run fast, said the Scarecrow to the lion. Get out of this deadly flower bed as soon as you like. We will bring the little girl with us, but if you shall fall asleep, you're too big to be carried. So the lion aroused himself and bounded forward as fast as he could go. In a moment he was out of sight. Let us make a chair with our hands to carry her, said the Scarecrow. So they picked up Toto and put the dog in Dorothy's lap. Then they made a chair with their hands for the seat and their arms for the arms, and carried the sleeping girl between them through the flowers. On and on they walked, and it seemed that the great carpet of deadly flowers that surrounded them would never end. Then they followed the bend of the river, and at last came upon their friend the lion, lying fast asleep among the poppies. The flowers had been too strong for the huge beast, and he had given up at last, falling only a short distance from the end of the poppy bed, where the sweet grass spread in beautiful green fields before them. We can do nothing for him, said the Tin Woodman sadly. He is much too heavy to lift. We must leave him here to sleep on in forever. And perhaps he will dream that he has found courage at last. I'm sorry, said the Scarecrow. The lion was a very good comrade for one so cowardly. But let us go on. They carried the sleeping Dorothy to a pretty spot beside the river, far enough from the poppy field to prevent her breathing any more of the poison of the flowers. Here they laid her gently on the soft grass and waited for the fresh breeze to waken her. Chapter 9. The Queen of the Field Mice. We cannot be far away from the yellow brick now, remarked the Scarecrow as he stood beside the girl, for we have come nearly as far as the river carried us away. The Tin Woodman was about to reply when he heard a low growl, and turning his head, which worked beautifully on hinges, he saw a strange beast come bounding over the grass towards them. It was indeed a great yellow wildcat, and the woodman thought it must be chasing something, for its ears were lying close to its head, and its mouth was wide open, showing 2 rows of ugly teeth, while its red eyes glowed like balls of fire. As it came nearer, the Tin Woodman saw that running before the beast was a little gray field mouse, and although he had no heart, he knew it was wrong for the wildcat to try to kill such a pretty, harmless creature. So the woodman raised his axe, and as the wildcat ran by, he gave a quick blow that cut the beast's head clean off from its body, and it rolled over at his feet in 2 pieces. The field mouse, now that it was freed from its enemy, stopped short. Then, coming closely up the woodman, it said in a squeaky little voice, "Oh, thank you. Thank you ever so much for saving my life." "Don't speak of it, I beg you," replied the woodman. "I have no heart, you know, and I'm careful to help those who may need a friend, or even if it happens to be only a mouse." "Only a mouse?" cried the little animal indignantly. "Why, I am the queen of all field mice." "Oh, indeed," said the woodman, making a bow. "Therefore you have done a great deed, as well as a brave one, in saving my life," added the queen. At that moment, several mice were seen running up as fast as their little legs could carry them. When they saw their queen, they exclaimed, "Oh, Your Majesty, we thought you would be killed. How did you manage to escape the wildcat, great wildcat?" They all bowed so low that the little queen that they almost stood up upon their heads. "This funny tin man," she answered, "killed the wildcat and saved my life. So hereafter you must all serve him and obey his slightest wish." "We will," cried the field mice in a shrill chorus. And then they scampered in all directions, for Toto had awakened from his sleep, and seeing all those mice around him, he gave one bark of delight and jumped right into the middle of the group. Toto had always loved to chase mice when he lived in Kansas, and he had saw no harm in it. But the Tin Woodman caught the dog in his arms and held him tight, while he called to the mice, "Come back, come back. Toto shall not hurt you." At this, the queen of the field mice stuck her head out from underneath the clump of grass and asked in a timid voice, "Are you sure he will not bite us?" "I'll not let him," said the woodman, "so do not be afraid." Only one by one the mice came creeping back, and Toto did not bark again, although he tried to get out of the woodman's arms, and would have bitten him had he known very well what he was made he was made of tin. Finally, one of the biggest mice spoke. "Is there anything we can do?" it asked. "We to repay you for saving the life of our queen?" "Nothing that I know of," answered the woodman. However, the Scarecrow, who had been trying to think but could not because his head was stuffed with straw, said quickly, "Oh yes, you can save our friend the Cowardly Lion who is asleep in the puppy bed." "A lion?" cried the little queen. "Why, he would eat us all up." "Oh no," declared the Scarecrow. This lion is a coward." "Really?" asked the mouse. "He says so himself," answered the Scarecrow, "and he never hurt anyone who is our friend with kindness. Never hurt who is our friend. If you will help us to save him, I promise that he shall treat you all with kindness." "Very well," said the queen. We will trust you, but what shall we do? Are there many of these mice which call you queen and are willing to obey you?" "Oh yes, there are thousands," she replied. "Then send them all to come here as soon as possible, and let each one bring a long piece of string." The queen turned to the mice that attended her and told them to go at once and get all her people. As soon as they heard her orders, they ran away in every direction as fast as possible. "Now," said the Scarecrow to the Tin Man, "you must go up to those trees by the riverside and make a truck that will carry the lion." So the woodman went at once to the trees and began to work. And he soon made a truck out of limbs of trees, from which he chopped away all the leaves and branches. He fastened it together with wooden pegs and made the four wheels out of short pieces of the big tree trunk. So fast and so well did he work that by the time the mice began to arrive, the truck was all ready for them. They came from all directions, and there were thousands of them, big mice and little mice and middle-sized mice, and each one brought a piece of string in its mouth. It was about this time that Dorothy woke up from her long sleep and opened her eyes. She was greatly astonished to find herself lying upon the grass, with thousands of mice standing up around and looking at her timidly. But the Scarecrow told her about everything. Turning to the dignified little queen, he said, "Permit me to introduce you to Her Majesty, the Queen." Dorothy nodded and gravely and at the Queen and made a curtsy, after which she became quite friendly with the little girl. The Scarecrow and the Woodman now began to fasten the mice to the truck, using the strings they had brought. One end of the string was tied around the neck of each mouse and the other end to the truck. Of course, the truck was 1,000 times bigger than any of the mice who were to draw it, but when all the mice had been harnessed, they were able to pull it quite easily. Even the Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman could sit on it, and were drawn swiftly by their queer little horses to the place where the lion lay asleep. After a great deal of hard work, for the lion was heavy, they managed to get him up on the truck. Then the Queen hurriedly gave her people the order to start, for she feared if the mice stayed among the poppies too long, they also would fall asleep. At first, the little creatures, many though they were, could hardly stir the heavy loaded truck, but the Tin Woodman and the Scarecrow both pushed it from behind, and they got along better. Soon they rolled the lion out of the poppy bed and green fields, where he could breathe the sweet fresh air instead of the poisonous scent of the flowers. Dorothy came to meet them and thanked the mice warmly for saving her companion from death. She had grown so fond of the big lion, she was glad she had been rescued. Then the mice, who unharnessed from the truck, scampered away through the grass of their homes. The Queen of the Mice was the last to leave. "If ever you need us again, come out into the field and call, and we shall hear you and come to your assistance." "Goodbye, goodbye," they all answered, and away the Queen ran, while Dorothy held Toto tightly as he could. Toto tightly, lest he should run after her and frighten her. After this, they sat down beside the lion, and he should awaken. Until he should awaken, and the Scarecrow brought Dorothy some fruit from a tree nearby, which she ate for her dinner. Chapter 10: The Guardian of the Gates. It was some time before the cowardly lion awakened, for he had lain among the poppies for a long while, breathing in their deadly fragrance. When he did open his eyes and roll off his truck, he was very glad to find himself still alive. "I ran as fast as I could," he said, sitting down and yawning. "But the flowers were too strong for me. How could you get me out?" Then they told him about the field mice and how they had generously saved him from death. And the cowardly lion laughed. "I have always thought myself very big and terrible, yet such little things as flowers came near to killing me, and such small animals as mice have saved my life. How strange it all is! But, comrades, what shall we do now?" "We must journey on until we find the road of yellow brick again," said Dorothy. "Then we can keep on the Emerald City." So the lion, refreshed and feeling quite himself again, they all started upon the journey. They so greatly enjoyed the walk through the soft, fresh grass that it was not long before they reached the road of yellow brick and turned again towards the Emerald City, where the great Oz dwelt. The road was smooth and paved now, and the country was beautiful, so that the travelers rejoiced in leaving the forest far behind, and with it meant the many dangers they had met in the gloomy shades. Once more they could see fences built beside the road, but these were painted green. When they came to a small house in which a farmer evidently lived, that also was painted green. They passed by several of these houses during the afternoon. Sometimes people came to the doors and looked at them as if they would like to ask questions, but no one came near them nor spoke to them because they were very much afraid of the great lion. The people were all dressed in clothing of a lovely emerald green color and wore peaked hats like those of the Munchkins. "This must be the land of Oz," said Dorothy, "and we are surely getting near the Emerald City." "Yes," answered the Scarecrow. "Everything is green here. While in the country of the Munchkins, blue was the favorite color. But the people do not seem to be as friendly as the Munchkins, and I'm afraid we shall be unable to find a place to pass the night." "I should like something to eat besides fruit," said the girl, "and I'm sure Toto is nearly starved. Let us stop at the next house and talk to the people." So they came to a good-sized farmhouse. Dorothy walked boldly up to the door and knocked. A woman opened it just far enough to look out and said, "What do you want, child? And why is that great lion with you?" We wish to pass the night with you, if you will allow us," answered Dorothy. "The lion is my friend and comrade and would not hurt you for the world." "Is he tame?" asked the woman, opening the door a little wider. "Oh, yes," said the girl, "and he is a great coward too. He will be more afraid of you than you are of him." "Well," said the woman, after thinking it over and taking another peep at the lion, "if it is the case that you may come in, and I'll give you some supper and a place to sleep." So they all entered the house, and where there were, besides the woman, 2 children and a man. The man had hurt his leg and was lying on the couch in a corner. They seemed greatly surprised to see so strange a company. While the woman was busy laying the table, the man asked, "Where are you all going?" "To the Emerald City," said Dorothy, "to see the great Oz." "Oh, indeed," exclaimed the man. "Are you sure that Oz will see you?" "Why not?" replied Dorothy. "Why, it is said that he never lets anyone come to his presence, and I have been to the Emerald City many times. It is beautiful and a wonderful place, but I never have been permitted to see him, the great Oz, nor do I know of any living person who has seen him." "Does he never go out?" asked the Scarecrow. "Never. He sits day after day in the great throne room of his palace, and even those who wait upon him do not see his face to face. "What is he like?" asked the girl. That is hard to tell," said the man thoughtfully. "Though you see, Oz is a great wizard and can take on any form he wishes, so that some say he looks like a bird, and some say he looks like an elephant, and some say he looks like a cat. To others he appears as a beautiful fairy or a brownie or in any other forms that pleases him. But who the real Oz is when he is in his own form, no living person can tell." "That is very strange," said Dorothy. But we must try in some way to see him, or we shall have made a great journey for nothing." "Why do you wish to see Oz?" asked the man. "I want him to give me some brains," said the Scarecrow eagerly. "Oh, Oz could do that easily enough," declared the man. "He has more brains than he needs. And I want him to give me a heart," said the Tin Woodman. "That will not trouble him," continued the old man. "Oz has a large collection of hearts of all shapes and sizes and shapes. and I want him to give me courage, said the Cowardly Lion. Oz keeps a great pot of courage in his throne room, said the man, which he has covered with the golden plate to keep it from running over. He will be glad to give you some. And I want him to send me back to Kansas, said Dorothy. Where is Kansas? Asked the man with surprise. I don't know, replied Dorothy sorrowfully, but it is my home and I'm sure it is somewhere. Very likely. Well, Oz can do anything, so I suppose he will find Kansas for you. But first you must go to see him, and that will be a hard task. For the Great Wizard does not like to see anyone, and he usually has his own way. But what do you want? He continued, speaking to Toto. Toto only wagged his tail. For strange to say, he could not speak. The woman now called them at supper. That supper was ready, so they gathered around the table, and Dorothy ate some delicious porridge and a dish of scrambled eggs and a plate of nice white bread, and enjoyed her meal. The lion ate some of the porridge, but did not care for it, saying it was made from oats, and oats were not the food for horses, not for lions. The Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman ate nothing at all. Toto ate a little of everything, and was glad to get a good supper again. The woman now gave Dorothy a bed to sleep in, and Toto lay down beside her, while the lion guarded the door of her room so she might not be disturbed. The Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman stood up in a corner and kept quiet all night, although, of course, they could not sleep. The next morning, as soon as the sun was up, they started on their way, and soon saw a beautiful green glow in the sky just before them. That must be the Emerald City, said Dorothy. As they walked in, the great green glow became brighter and brighter, and it seemed that at last they were nearing the end of their travels. Yet it was afternoon before they came to the great wall that surrounded the city. It was high and thick and of a bright green color. In front of them, and at the end of the road of yellow brick, was a big gate, all studded with emeralds and glittered so in the sun that even the painted eyes of the Scarecrow were dazzled by their brilliancy. There was a bell beside the gate, and Dorothy pushed the button and heard the silvery tinkle sound within. Then the big gate swung slowly open, and they all passed through and found themselves in a high arched room, the walls of which glistened in countless emeralds. Before them stood a little man about the same size as the Munchkins. He was clothed all in green, but from his head to his feet, and even his skin was of a greenish tint. At his side was a large green box. When he saw Dorothy and her companions, the man asked, "What do you wish to in the Emerald City?" "We came here to see the Great Oz," said Dorothy. The man was so surprised at this answer that he sat down to think it over. "It has been many years since anyone asked me to see Oz," he said, shaking his head with perplexity. "He is powerful and terrible, and if you come on an idle or foolish errand or to bother the wise reflection of the Great Oz, he might be angry and destroy you all in an instant. But it is not a foolish errand nor an idle one," replied the Scarecrow. "It is important, and we have been told that Oz is a good wizard." "So he is," said the Green Man, "and he rules the Emerald City wisely and well. But to those who are not honest or who approach him from curiosity, he is most terrible, and few have ever dared to see his face. I'm the guardian of the gates, and since you demand to see the great Oz, I must take you to his palace. But first you must put on the spectacles." "Why?" asked Dorothy. "Because if you did not wear spectacles, the brightness and glory of the Emerald City would blind you. Even those who live in the city must wear spectacles night and day. They are all locked on, for Oz so ordered it when the city was first built. And I have only key that will unlock them." Dorothy opened the big box, and Dorothy saw that it was filled with spectacles of every size and shape, and of them had a green glass in them. The guardian of the gates found a pair that would just fit Dorothy and put them over her eyes, and the 2 golden bands fastened them and passed around the back of her head, where they were locked together by a little key that was on the other end of the chain the guardian of the gates wore around his neck. When they were on, Dorothy could not take them off had she wished, but of course she did not wish to be blinded by the glare of the Emerald City, so she said nothing. Then the Green Man fitted spectacles for the Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman and the Lion, and even on little Toto, and were locked fast with the key. Then the guardian of the gates put on his own glasses and told him he was ready to show them into the palace. Taking a big gold key from a peg on the wall, he opened another gate, and they all followed him through the portal into the streets of the Emerald City.